You're listening to Engagement Drivers, presented by EveryoneSocial. Each week, we'll share actionable tips, strategies, and success stories that you and your teams can use to steer your brand, social, and employee engagement in the right direction.
Hi, everyone. Todd here, the Director of Marketing at EveryoneSocial. Hope you're all enjoying Employee Advocacy Week with all the great content and insights we have from experts. Today, I'm very excited to talk to Rani Mani, the Head of Employee Advocacy over at Adobe. Adobe's been a customer of ours for a couple of years now, and it's always a pleasure to work with them and get to learn from Rani, who always has some great insights for us. So today, we're going to be talking about how employee advocacy fosters workplace community. A topic that she actually wrote a guest post for us over a year ago, I think it was now. So be sure to check that out. If you look on our blog page, you can search for the same topic and you will find that great post. But Rani, thank you so much for doing this with us. I know everyone's going to learn a lot from you today. Before we get started, would love to get a little intro of yourself for those who might not be familiar with you, your background, and maybe how you got involved in employee advocacy. We'll go from there.
Sure. Hey, Todd, thanks for having me. My background, I've been at Adobe for 13 years, and I started out as a program manager, and I was working in the customer experience department and ultimately leading our social support team, which is our team that provides customer support and technical support over social media. But I realized, we could have communities in those kind of spheres, but I wanted to do something a little bit more broader and a little bit more communal, if you will. And that's what brought me into the work I'm doing today. And so it started out with me working with external influencers, which I still do. And then I realized that the treatment plan that works for external influencers can absolutely be pointed inwards. And those are the same tactics that we need to deploy to activate and mobilize employees. And so I always say I have the best job at the company because I get to work with 22,000, employees worldwide who are clearly the best of the best in what they do. So it's been super fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that background. Yeah, and it's kind of funny too. I mean, I think if I recall, Adobe has been kind of an early adopter of employee advocacy too. You kind of breaking the mold there. A lot of customers that we've had were maybe afraid at first, or some businesses weren't sure. You guys kind of dove in there right away, which I think is great and kind of a testament to the creative side of Adobe's products and everything that you guys do over at the company. Yeah. So let's just jump right into it. I mean, I think one of the cool things about employee advocacy is we've seen a pretty big shift, I think, over the years too. I mean, obviously the pandemic of last year and continuation this year with remote work has changed a lot of things for customers and businesses, along with remote work and global locations and everyone kind of working all over the place. For us, employee advocacy continues to kind of evolve. I think everyone kind of knows it started off as a marketing sales kind of play, and it's since expanded, into employer branding, employee engagement, employee communications, and of course, community, which I think is something that you're really passionate about. So I kind of wanted to ask you, what does employee advocacy mean to you in today's world? I think we all kind of have similar definitions, but I think everyone views it a little bit differently. So I'd love to hear how you define it in your own kind of space.
There's the traditional amplification piece, right? Mobilizing our employees to be our biggest brand ambassadors and be loud and proud about who we are as the company out in the world, whether that be online or in-person meetings or whatever that is. And that's still a very strong pillar of employee advocacy. But I'd say, Todd, the bigger piece that we're leaning into now is the opportunity for people to connect and contribute to one another's lives and careers and really come forward as knowledge experts and do more of that sharing. Because in this digital first kind of hybrid environment that we're entering, we need something that kind of equals the playing field and that allows people to connect and celebrate, right, all across the globe, because,
Right.
Really have the luxury in the last 18 months or so to be face to face. And so having an online kind of hub to congregate in, I think is the way to go. And so that's that additional layer of definition I bring to employee advocacy that allows that it's really this centerpiece, if you will, of connecting employees to one another and to the brand and the brand's bigger mission.
Love that. Yeah, we totally agree. And that's something I think, our whole team really agrees upon too, is we really love this kind of community aspect of like a rallying point for everybody to kind of be connected and see whatever everyone else is doing, right? In a way of what they're sharing, how they're creating, getting to know colleagues who might not be, in the office or right next to them. It's something that we're really passionate about too. And I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think more organizations are starting to understand that too, that of course, we want our employees to create and share content or be a part of the brand content, but there's a bigger aspect there too, is getting connected with everybody, which I think makes a better workplace.
Connect and I'd say contribute, right? Contribute to one
Right.
another's success, and then the things that can be done for productivity when you're doing that type of knowledge sharing in a centralized hub type space that brings the whole company together. I think those are some numbers that I'd love to see ourselves and others measure, right? When using employee advocacy to be that rallying point, what kind of productivity improvements can you actually derive?
Right. That's a great point. So what are some of the challenges that you think workplace community that you're seeing today? And then kind of along with that, how do you see employee advocacy and platforms, strategies or the platform help alleviate some of these points? I mean, we kind of alluded probably a little bit to this, but first, again, kind of what are the challenges you're seeing of workplace community right now in today's world? And then how do you see employee advocacy kind of fitting into kind of help fix those problems?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges is the fragmentation of employees, right? Whether it's because of hyper localized site based work, right? That we've got so many offices around the globe. And because we're now entering this hybrid world where some folks are working from home on different days than others, and no one is ever fully together. I think that just automatically, inherently presents this notion of, am I missing out? Am I being left out? Am I up to date on the latest and greatest? Are opportunities flying by me? That kind of sense of almost FOMO, right? That fear of missing out. And I feel like employee advocacy really allows the playing field to be level again. And it also really brings to everyone's fingertips the most pertinent things that people need to know about, whether that be industry news, whether that be company news, or whether that be who's up and coming within the employee base, right? That notion of who's in our house. And so that's really where I think platforms like EveryoneSocial and platform strategies could really come in and play and help, because intranets and all, it's so archaic and kind of, it's not community based, right? Intranets tend to be one-way communication kind of pushed out, and it's a tell strategy, right? It's not allowing for people to engage with one another, let alone the platform. And so those are the things that I feel like the future of employee advocacy is solving for.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And we've seen another customer of ours, Cloudera, Shelby, will also be sharing some insights for Employee Advocacy Week. So make sure everyone checks that out as well. They had that same kind of thing with employee engagement last year with COVID and kind of creating this silos of people all over. They wanted a platform where it didn't matter if you didn't share necessarily or create all the time, but that you engaged and that you're interacting with other team members and getting to learn who you work with on a daily basis and kind of, again, build that sense of community. And it's not the first time it's come up on conversations. There's a lot more talk of this. And I think people are really starting to understand the value beyond just the sharing and creating side of it, right? Just the rallying point, the being able to be part of a community and really learn from others who you work with that you might not get to interact with every day.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I feel like people are demanding engagement, right? They're in demanding entertainment almost, in addition to employment, right? Employment alone is no longer just going to meet the mark anymore.
Right. And I think the other cool thing too is that we're seeing more people who are getting more of HR involved and kind of becoming a part where when new employees are onboarded, they're getting, rallied around the company and saying, hey, everyone, meet this new person who's just joined our company, engage with them, connect with them, like get to know who they are. And it's kind of a cool way to get everyone pretty hyped up for a new employee. And we actually do that internally ourselves with our, we use our own platform for everything else. And every time we have a new hire, we get pumped up and rally around them. It's just a great way to start off on the right foot when people are remote or, not being able to be in person all the time.
I love that. And, right now it's intern season, right? And,
Oh, yes.
and I'm thinking these poor interns who are having to do it all remotely. What a tragedy, right? That they're missing out on that FaceTime and all that networking. And what a wonderful way for them to be able to introduce themselves and have that opportunity to connect with the rest of the org.
Exactly. And shout out to our intern, Luke, who has gone just through that with us as well. He joined us in April and we onboarded him pretty much through, Slack and our own platform. But it's been great working with him. So yes, exactly. Interns have been missing out. And this is a great way to kind of get them together with our community. So speaking of that, what I think is really interesting too is, a lot of times with how does building a workplace community or thinking about employee advocacy, how does it benefit the employees? I think a lot of times that companies are really focused on the benefit for the organization, which of course is super important. We want to make sure that the company is getting results from what they're using. But I think a lot of times it becomes a one-way street, and it needs to be a two-way street where employees are actually getting something of value out of it. And again, we kind of hinted at this a little bit too, but really love to learn kind of how you feel, how employees really benefit from being part of this workplace community. Like what does it help them, as either their work, their personal brands, whatever it may be?
Oh my goodness. I mean, the internal exposure, not to mention the external exposure of your expertise. We haven't really been able to run these studies, but I would like to have a cohort of folks who are super engaged in our advocacy programs versus those that aren't, and really kind of measure people's career trajectories, because I really believe that by being plugged in and as you build your personal brand and your thought leadership, that your career will exponentially accelerate in a way for those that aren't as plugged in and putting in the investment in time wouldn't, right? So I really truly agree with you that it has to be a give to get plan that you're doing as you're building out these programs. Employees have to find value. And the good news is this kind of personal branding and expertise is transferable, right? It's not something you want to have leave your company, but from an employee's perspective, it is your own personal asset, if you will, that you take with you anywhere you go.
Yeah, totally. And we always say, like, you can't be afraid to, like, if employees are going to leave, that's their prerogative. You can't be afraid to let them build their personal brand or their knowledge base. You want them to excel and grow. And if that means potentially maybe leaving the company in the future, you want to wish them the best of luck. And I think those are the companies that have the most success when they have the culture like that, right? With the hiring, and that they're willing to say, hey, if you move on, that's fine. We're glad you spent your time building your personal brand, interacting with us and being very engaged. We see that all the time, but it's a great feeling for the employee to know that they're supported either way if they move on to a new career or a new position.
Exactly.
So keeping the community alive is actually, sometimes a challenge for, I think, some companies or people who are thinking about employee advocacy or might be thinking about, like, how do we keep this community alive and active that, employees not only feel engaged, but that the company leaders who might be a program admin or a strategy leader, are actually doing the right thing. So do you have any tips, that would keep this community alive and active as they start to build it? Because sometimes, things can ramp up really quickly and then that excitement kind of dies down. But we always want to try to keep people pretty level there or continuing to grow their programs. What would be some tips that you think would help keep these kind of internal communities through an advocacy platform alive?
I'd say first and foremost, really understand what makes their heart sing, right? Individually, it's almost like intimacy at scale, right? Get to know these folks and what success means and looks like to them, and see how the program could actually support that. And because, for example, some of our folks in the program, for them, it is about career trajectory and moving upward and to the right? And so establishing their presence online and making sure they have a really strong digital footprint, all of that is important. And those are things that you could help augment through content curation, not to mention training, right? Because if you have a certain amount of social expertise within the team, within the advocacy team, that you can impart to these folks for that's important to them, then that's what you do, right? But for other people, it's about showing support to one another, right? They want to be cheerleaders and they want to be seen as the wind beneath other people's wings, right? And so how do you honor and celebrate that? And so basically the essence of the tip is personalize the benefits to what really matters to the folks in the program versus having a one size fits all kind of cookie cutter approach that really is about benefiting the brand. Obviously, you as a company and as an organization need to see the dividends of your efforts. But for as long as you lead with what's in it for the employee, I think you can lose.
Yes, I totally love that. Totally agree. And that's so true. Additionally, for anyone out there that is listening to, feel free to reach out to us at any time too. Our implementation team and our client success team always has good tips. We've learned so much over the years too, just working with different companies of what's really engaging, how are we keeping these programs really alive and getting demand for it. And a few companies have gone to a couple hundred employees to thousands of employees now, and they're having great success with that. So feel free to reach out to us at any time. Like, even if you're not going to become a customer, we just want to educate. We just get so pumped about employee advocacy as a whole. And I think, Rani, you share that same sentiment as us. You just get real pumped to talk about this stuff, which is always fun.
Yeah, no, it's such the lifeblood of the company, right? Because engagement, right? Engagement is the new employment, if you will. Because lots of people quit and stay, and that's hugely costly, right, to the company and to the individual. So
Yes,
anything we can do to kind of shake off those stuff and get people excited, that's the thing to do.
definitely. So I think one thing that's really interesting too is figuring out, like, okay, how do people get started in this? So one of the things we wanted to ask you to and really get an insight in is, if someone's actually really thinking now, not only about the intrinsic benefits of marketing or sales, but now they're thinking about workplace community. Hopefully they are, now that we've learned a little bit from your experience and kind of the ideas behind it. What are some things you would recommend that someone would do first before they just jump into a platform or strategy, right? It's easy to get excited about platforms and strategies. Trust me, being in marketing, I get real excited when I see something new, but I always have to remind myself to take a step back first. So someone who might be looking to do this kind of stuff and get into community, what should they be thinking about first before they just jump right in and maybe sign up for a platform or build a whole strategy out?
I think it goes back to what is the culture of the company, right? Who are you? Who do you want to be known as? And how do you kind of elevate that, right? What's important to the brand and what's important to the employees, and from that, figure out is it and what are the sore points, right? Do we have a productivity issue? So do we need to get more knowledge sharing going on? Do we need to have like a ask me anything session or a series of sessions where certain experts are elevated and spotlighted and information can be shared that way, right? There's so many things that you can do once you have a strategy and platform. But prior to that, I think the step one is to figure out from a culture perspective, who do you aspire to be? Where are you and what's the gap? And this is where the community can really come in to play a role to fill that gap. And then advocacy can be the fuel that kind of steps in to say, okay, what are the tactics to take you from where you are to where you want to be?
Yeah, I think the culture thing is huge. That's something we've talked about too in past blog posts. Just kind of saying, like, look, take a look at your culture first too before you just think that a program or strategy is going to solve a lot of issues. It can certainly help elevate, but you need to take a look at how people are viewing the company as a whole. Because no matter what, if you don't have that in place or you're not trusting employees to do things, on behalf of the brand or representing your brand, a strategy or program isn't necessarily going to solve a lot of the issues. So I think taking the research, kind of like you're saying, and taking a step back and looking at some things first before you kind of just dive head first is always a good place to start.
Right. Right. And does the company lend itself to having the type of products and services that are ideal for advocacy programs? That isn't to say, I mean, at Adobe, Todd, we have such a high class problem, right? In that we are defining creativity, we have jaw dropping visuals. It's hard not to get excited at a company like ours and
Right.
not want to advocate, right? Um, that said, there might be lesser sexy companies out there where this isn't the culture, right? Advocating and creating brand ambassadors and all probably isn't the right move forward, just because that's not what that culture kind of upholds as valuable. And so the trick is not to force it.
Yes, I agree. That totally makes sense too, is not to force something through that potentially won't work. And we've seen that happen before in the past where it just was try to force it and they try to make it happen, it doesn't work, and they kind of just blame the whole employee advocacy side of things. But it's just more than that, right? It just wasn't a fit, or just your culture isn't prepared for it right now. It doesn't mean it's not going to work in the future.
Right, exactly.
So what are some examples of how Adobe is using employee advocacy to build a community among their brand ambassadors? So I know you guys, your brand ambassadors are top notch and they're really passionate about the brand, but I'm curious, how your strategy and the program use kind of helps build that community among the brand ambassadors that are sharing and creating on behalf of Adobe.
So we do a lot of like exclusive events, or I should say we have, right? When pre-pandemic, when we would bring people together for briefings, for example, when we had our premier annual conferences like Adobe Max or Adobe Summit, we would give very exclusive sneak peeks to our brand ambassadors so that they were armed and poised with what's coming and how they can engage and what the key messages were that they could actually augment and support. And that usually came in the form of a lunch, like a exclusive luncheon that was really intimate and private. And it was usually hosted by senior ops staff members. And so that kind of proximity to senior leadership was always a draw. And we have also done like advocacy summits for our brand ambassadors, where we bring in external guests to share tips and tricks and best practices. And we provide exclusive training. We've done outings, based on certain people rising to the top of leaderboards and whatnot on the platform. We've done, outings like giving out concert tickets or taking folks to baseball games, and all of that kind of really engenders a familial kind of feel amongst ambassadors. And that's super nice because they're each other's best cheerleaders, right? And they really root one another on. And so facilitating opportunities for them to get to know one another better and deeper has always been fun.
That's super cool. And I actually remember seeing a lot of the pictures that would come on through LinkedIn or things like that, where some of the Adobe ambassadors were out at like a baseball game or at some other kind of special event that they were invited to through their sharing and their work being on the top of the leaderboards, which is always cool. So, I mean, I was seeing them with my feeds, and I didn't follow every Adobe employee that was a brand ambassador. So it was still getting into my feed and still getting to see the brand and all the cool culture that you guys are building over there.
Yeah. I mean, the current approach, though, Todd, is when you're starting, there's that exclusivity, there's that kind of small base kind of feel, right? But ultimately, I'd like to get to the point where the whole company feel like, as part of signing up to be an employee, you're inherently and intrinsically an ambassador versus a very elite few who get to do it, right? So that's the direction I'd like to see us go. Really democratize this and really put the power of community and sharing and knowledge in the hands of anyone and everyone who chooses to take it.
Yeah, I think that's the right approach too. And we're seeing more companies opening up to that idea too, and realizing like it doesn't matter necessarily if everyone's going to be sharing. This is a community. This is what we do here. This is the culture. This is how you stay connected. Even if you're an intern, a CEO, an engineer, whatever department you work on, like you're part of this company, and we want you to be interacting and learning from everybody. So we're excited to see that happen. I think it will obviously take some work and some time to piece that all together, but it's going to be a huge thing for a lot more companies who are willing to take the risk or expand into, a company-wide kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you wanted to share about workplace community and or employee advocacy that organizations should really be thinking about today? It's still pretty new on a lot of people's radars. And to be honest, even when I joined the company 4 years ago here, I didn't know what employee advocacy was either. So it's one of those things. It's almost like a best kept secret that's still slowly unveiling itself to the world. But wanted to see if you had anything else that you thought was worth sharing with anyone who might be considering doing these things or should be thinking about before they jump in.
To really honor who's in your backyard, right? Like, I think because these employees are within the four walls of your company, it's really, really easy to take them for granted. Much like we tend to be the worst to our family or people that are close by, right? As opposed to, and the analogy I draw, Todd, is people pay lots and lots of money for external influencers, right?
Yes.
Know that you probably have some of the best influencers in the industry within your four walls. And so it's up to you to cultivate and nurture those relationships and not dismiss or take for granted because they're in the house already, right? And so that would be my parting comment. Don't dismiss what you have in front of you, and honor and celebrate that before you start, not in place of, but start there before you start to spend goo gobs of money externally.
Well, I think that's the best way to end this conversation right there. I don't think anything more is needed there. But if anyone in our audience wants to connect with you or talk about employee advocacy, where some of the best places they can get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me on LinkedIn, Todd, as well as Twitter. I'm Rani Mani 0707.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Rani, so much for this conversation. I'm sure we'll be talking more about community in the near future as well. Looking forward to Employee Advocacy Week, and thank you again for your contribution.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with more engagement insights. Want to know how EveryoneSocial can provide you with the tools needed to keep everyone at your company connected, informed, creating, and sharing? Visit EveryoneSocial.com to learn more.